and welcome to the JYLP podcast.
At what age do we learn how to have better conversations? At what age do we learn to have better conversations with ourselves?
Hello, welcome people of Earth. I'm happy you are here. It's me, your host, a green bean. Today we have Crystal Nyman on the podcast. We talk all things growth, all things changing, all things artistry, social media, influencers, learning from your mistakes, honoring yourself, accepting growth. It's great. We talk so much great stuff on here. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you do, make sure you share it, make sure you like, make sure you follow, make sure you leave a review if you have some time. I appreciate all of that. If you want to stay posted on what's going on in the world of Junkyard Love, in the creations of what I'm creating as my alias, Jacob from the Internet, follow me on Instagram, Jacob from the Internet. I usually keep the podcast updates there. I post clips there. I post trailers for the podcast there. So check that out, Jacob from the Internet on Instagram, and also check out Crystal Nyman as well on Instagram. Cheers, guys. Hope you enjoy the episode.
Smoking, had to get rid of it. Nicotine's a hell of a drug, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just so addictive. You quit cold. I feel like the first time I quit smoking cigarettes, I went 6 months without smoking, and then it was on my birthday, and I was like, I'm gonna have a cigarette when I'm out. And then quitting after that, you have a pack, so you're goes from smoking when you're drinking to you're like, oh, I'll have one.
Yeah, you're like, I'm not going to throw away the pack.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, it's good. The vape, I don't know how I feel about it, but it's better than a cigarette. So
that's kind of how I feel when I buy, I'll buy cookies or something, and I'll be like, I'll spread this out for a few days, and then I'm killing this box for sure.
I know. We had some friends over for Super Bowl, and we have so many chips and snacks and things, and it's you have them and you're like, oh, I'll just dabble. And then you're like, no, that bag is gone.
I'm going ham on this.
Yeah, yesterday Will was like, where's that nacho cheese? And I was like, I put some in a bowl, and then I was like, get rid of it. He's like, well, you threw it out. It was perfectly good. She's like, you waste so much food. I'm like, fuck, no.
I know. Well, dude, I do the same thing though, because I'll enjoy it at first, or I'll, overindulge when I'm shopping or whatever. And then, like I said, I think I'm spreading it out. And then I'm sitting there eating the whole fucking bag, and I just can't stop. So a lot of times I'll literally just throw away the last half of the bag. It seems wasteful, but I don't know. What are you going to do with the bag?
Yeah. Pros and cons.
Hey, when was the first time that do you remember the first time that you smoked a cigarette?
Yeah, it was actually in high school.
Yeah. It was at a party or?
Yeah, I had people up at my house actually, and it was a Camel Turkish Gold.
You remember the type.
Yeah. And then what was actually I remember going up and visiting my friend Mary in Seattle, and she had it was like a Camel pack, but it was black, pink, and teal. So appealing, where you're like, ooh, I want to smoke that. It was like a light menthol. I thought it was so cool too.
Isn't that funny how the companies play to ooh, oh my God. Young people like pretty colors.
That was a cigarette for young girls, for sure.
The young girl cigarette. Now everybody smokes the Juuls. I feel like I hope that we don't learn that, they're worse for us in the long run, but it seems, I don't know, it seems better. It's there's not that heat going directly to you.
Well, I think too, of course, we're always going to find new things. And you're always justifying your vices, right?
Right.
I think, so I smoked the Juul for a long time, and that was good because I stopped smoking the cigarettes. And it's crazy because I actually, my boyfriend Will, his younger brother, he's in high school, and that's the one who I saw it from. He's half the people in high school smoke it.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's the one who got me started on that. So I smoked the Juul, and then there was all that stuff. Do you remember when it was vape, people are in the hospital for vapes and all this stuff?
Yeah,
Which,
I remember.
Looking back, I'm was that the beginning of COVID?
Oh shit, I didn't even think about that.
Right? So there was that scare with that. And so I was like, all right, I have to stop the Juul. And so I'd stop the Juul, but then the next thing you know, I'm I have my American spirits back. And doing hair, you can't smoke and do hair. It's just you can't be smelling like a cigarette and up close with someone. So it's that balance of all right, like, do I really want to smoke? But I mean, you get off work and you're like, that's what you look forward to is a cigarette. Um, but I feel like I've like dabbled back and forth, but they made those like puff bars now. And so I like looking at, I'm like, the puff bars are terrible because that's like, it's in a plastic. First of all, like the waste, like you're wasting so much just plastic because you use it once and then you throw it out. With the jewels, like at least are using the smaller things. But again, so I was trying to quit the jewels. So then you're like, okay, well, I'll just buy a puff bar, kind of like the indulging with the chips, where it's like, this is going to limit me, this will be it. But those, I would feel like when I'm working out, like you would feel them in your chest. So I think with stuff like that, where it's not regulated, I would like compare it back. I'm like, okay, well, at least Juul is like a regulated thing. And then I more recently have switched to the Sorn, which you buy like the salt nicotine and you can get like a lower dose. So I think as far as like trying to quit something, that's probably the best way because you can actually monitor the amount of nicotine that you're getting and you know what's
Like
going
weaning
into
off
it.
too.
Yeah, and it lasts so much longer. There's not as much waste. Like your device lasts longer, and then it has like a coil that you switch out. So,
Huh.
I feel
So I had a Pax pen, which it was THC in mine. This is a while back ago, but I remember the coolest part about it was it was connected to an iPhone app. It was connected to Bluetooth, and so you can set like your temperature settings, based off of like it was a session, I think they would call it, uh,
yeah,
and basically it was good because I would notice, just like we would all do, when it comes to cigarettes or vapes or the THC pens, whatever. It's almost kind of like if you're getting stressed out or you're nervous, you're like, say you're at a social setting, you step
mhm,
outside, you're gonna be like, like you're
right.
getting your breath of fresh air, so to say. And I really like the Pax pen because the app I would notice that I would like stress smoke it. Like I would be getting anxiety. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to try to get really high to what, I don't know, whatever was in my head. And so on the app, you could set it to be like 60 seconds and then the thing locks.
Oh
And so you can't
wow,
just sit there if you're stressed out, just outside for 5
yeah,
minutes, like if you set your little session time. So that was kind of cool. We have all these really cool, updated technology and these cool,
wow.
cool new ways to get, a little bit altered states of consciousness or reduce stress or reduce like all these things, the craziness of the world. It's kind of cool that technology changes along with it, and we could slowly like wean off or kind of control our vices to some extent, I guess. Again, there might be justification, but
No, I get that. I mean, that's like the double-edged sword too, where you're like, so much technology is so nice, but then like I was watching Judas and the Black Messiah the other night, which very good movie, highly recommend. But we were just talking about like times were just so different. And with that, actually, Netflix has a movie, Chicago 7. So we watched the two of those and we're like, back then it's just so crazy because you don't have like the instant technology and the social media and stuff where messages are, shared so quickly. But talking about that too, I feel like we're just so much more fast paced now because we do have technology and all this stuff. Like it's like you constantly want, like it's feeding and I feel with that, like you have anxiety and stuff like that. So it's interesting. I'm like, sometimes I wish I grew up in the 70s and then you see what was really going on. And then you're like, okay, like at least we're like, able to become more aware and talk about these things that have kind of been just pushed along,
mm,
and we were talking like they cover the Vietnam War and how like we weren't supposed to be there, and it's just interesting, you know, how things have changed, but technology I feel like is giving a forefront to people to be able to kind of spread their messages and stuff like that. So
right, yeah,
and,
it definitely has. I mean, I think our generation, like really thinking about how much I always try to rephrase this and I always try to find like the correct phrasing because I don't want to sound like, oh, we know more than our parents by far, because it's
yeah.
not necessarily that. I mean, but like if you do want to quantify sheer information, like how much information is
Oh
shoved into our brains, like me already this morning, I was up at, I don't know, 7:45, and right away I'm like listening to like YouTube lectures, and I like listen to multiple things. I listened to the ass end of a podcast as I was just showering. Like we're always inserting new information, new perspectives, and those new perspectives, who are people talking now, like they're also kind of younger people who grew up in this era. they're also doing the same thing. So the
Right.
flow of information, the flow of like new thoughts, new ways of being, knowing information, like it's almost it's beautiful, but it can be crippling in a sense too, I think.
Totally.
Like
Totally.
knowing everything. I mean, there's almost something I think about the like when you're walking down the street and there's a homeless person and you kind of like because you can't just like withdraw all the money from your bank account every time you see a homeless person and give them their money to get back up on their luck, but there's almost other layers of stuff like that where we walk past a homeless person, we kind of have to deny our inner humanity. We
Yeah.
also almost have to deny like when I'm eating a tomato, I have to kind of not think about the fact that it could have been like child slavery
Yeah.
way across the world. There's just so much information that comes with everything that we're doing that we almost have to like choose to block some of it out in a way.
Yeah. It's interesting that you brought up the homeless thing too, because obviously I work in Center City, so in Philly, you see a lot of that. But I had the thought the other day, honestly, like 2 days ago, I was leaving and there was a guy outside. He's like, "Hey, can you help me out?" And like, he really looked like he needed some help. And when I first moved to college, I got played by so many people. Like I saw a woman, and she gave me this story, and I'm like, oh, like didn't have hardly any money. Gave her like $5. I see her the next day, and she has a different story. I mean, it was like cancer the first time, and then it was her boyfriend's beating her, and I'm like, oh. But I had the other day, I had just the thought because he had asked me, and I really didn't have any like cash on me. And we always talk about cash is king. And I think with technology and things moving, I'm like, so at what point are we going to be like, everything's digital? And like, when you want to give someone like some money, you just like bump your phones together and like transfer your money, like things like that, where I'm like, I feel like as much as it's like, you don't think that it could go there, and that's a possibility of like, everything becomes so digital.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, where we are, our generation, broad blanket stroke there, our generation is like we're really having to figure out very quickly how to deal with all this technological change, and like
So
it's changing us, like literally who humans are, who the human species is, and what we're capable of, and what we're capable of knowing, and
yeah,
how. I mean, the fact I've said this before, the fact that right now on this podcast, I could, if I knew someone in China, I could just chime them in, and they can turn their phone around, and I see exactly what's going on in China right now. Like that's
exactly.
pretty crazy compared to like we're just the thing that came after apes. Like what the
I
hell?
know.
We're
I
able to
know.
see a portal across the world now.
I know. I think with that too, there is like a bit of anxiety. Like for instance, with me, with my career path, like a huge thing of it is having to have some sort of social media presence because you got to get yourself out there. And like I had so much anxiety about originally deciding to do the podcast because I just feel like I mean, not super uncomfortable because I'm talking to you, but like if I were to just have to like talk to my camera, like and give tutorials and things like that, I'm super uncomfortable talking to no one. So been a huge thing. I was listening to a podcast the other day. Um, it helps like stylists with the whole business side of things, and they were covering social media and like where you need to be putting the most of your time and things like that. And I have this extra layer of anxiety that is kind of debilitating in the sense of like, okay, you got to tear down that wall and like stop being fearful of this, because that is a next step for you to be able to share what and there's so much knowledge about little things. I was blowing out my hair today. I'm like, people don't know you can do this trick or that trick, and there is knowledge to be shared, and it's just kind of getting rid of that fear of putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
Also, too, I think like being the center of attention, I have a hard time with that. Like I do so many weddings and things like that, and the more I do, I'm like, oh, I don't want that day where it's like all about you, tension's on you. Like that's
Mhm.
I mean, like we can have like a party and stuff, but I don't want it to be like centered around. I don't know, I have a hard time with that side of
Yeah.
things.
No, I totally get that. And what you said about like kind of running your business, your brand, your like artistry on social media, that's super rough. I struggle with that a lot too, dude. Like yesterday, for example, I was listening to Gary Vee. I always try to like sprinkle in some Gary Vee just because I get a little too ethereal, and sometimes I'm like, "Oh, yeah, like, I've gotta I have to make money, and I have, business and, like, things like that, so I have to try to sharpen that," so I'll listen to Gary Vee, but yesterday he was talking about, LinkedIn essentially, like
Mhm.
and I was just sitting there thinking that like low level of anxiety just immediately like, crap, I'm not doing enough on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Crap, I'm like gonna miss this whole wave. Great,
Yeah.
like I'm missing out. All these people are surpassing me in this area of business and whatever. It's really hard though because I feel like you might be able to relate with this. I feel like pretty fully because the when you consider yourself just like an artist of sorts, like I'm a creator or like yeah, I do DJing, but I'm also doing podcasts and I'm also like trying to
Right.
put my thoughts out or I'm trying to whatever. And like you're also designing people's looks. You're drawing who they could potentially
Yeah.
be. You know, it's like
Yeah.
it's so much artistry in itself. So sometimes I feel like the artistry or like the authenticity of what you're truly doing starts to get like just a little muddied and murkied when you're trying to throw in business and trying to make sure
Totally.
like, you know, like artistry doesn't always have that much to do with GDP, you know?
I think it's hard too, like being an artist is just a tough thing. And it's like, it's interesting because I don't know, I feel like it's the same with like so many different aspects of art too. But it's like as soon as you like you're an artist, but then like at what point do you become a sellout where people want to label you like, oh, and that's a tough thing. It's like, okay, well, if I'm now like making money or, doing these things, it's like, oh, they're sellout. And it's like, well, that's actually a step in becoming successful. And it's tough. And I see a lot of conversation on social media now too. There's this stylist who's like calling out, like, she's like, I'm get invited to these like educational forums. And she's like, I get so discouraged because as soon as someone says something that like other people don't agree with, or they're doing something and they're like, oh, you ripped that off of them. Or like, she's like, you can't ever get ahead because there's always people tearing you down. She's like, so that's like a huge part. She's like, honestly, just stop inviting me because, this is supposed to be an educational platform and all you guys are doing is just ripping each other apart.
Mm.
So it's tough. Like, I don't know. I think and it's the same thing with like tattooing. And I think the other hard part about social media too is like, at what point are you like gonna put more into your social media than you are into your craft? Because like you can
Mm.
get really good at social media and like get the right angles or take the right lighting or do all these things, but in person you're like, oh my god, I saw their work and that was like not what I expected. So it's tough with that side too of like trying to be authentic and show a real, you know, image of what you are actually capable of. So it's tough with that.
Yeah, it seriously is. I think a lot of artists, I feel like a lot of artists can resonate with that. I mean, because so I look back on my Instagram, I look back like when I was pretty much primarily just DJing, but
Mhm.
the way that I would it's interesting how much time I would put into my social media, like, compared to like, what the benefits of me getting, like, all these cool, like, streetwear photos and, like, it is cool and it's fun in itself, and it is like, yeah, you're supporting your brand and you're, like, you're, kind of, like, taking over the role of, like, I guess I am some form of influencer or whatever we call those content creators now on social media, and it's like me going home and setting up, taking an hour to like get the right angles and like
Yeah.
get the right lighting and like, oh, what do I want to wear? Like if I want to change my shoes or something, it's fun. But like, what if I spend that hour like practicing my craft of DJing? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, so,
Yeah.
so it's
Well,
kind
and
of
I
hard
think
selling
too,
yourself.
yeah, I think too, like a big thing is there's times where I like look back on things I've done or like, when you have the opportunity and you're like, okay, I want to do this for social media. So often in those moments, it's like I'm actually like the least satisfied or happy in that moment versus I'm like, damn, like I wish someone was just here like taking this video right now because like I love that application. I love the way that I painted this or I love the way that this turned out. And like so often those like great moments that I have, I'm like, I don't have anything to show for it. And the moments where, I do get some image, I'm like, all right, that was like good, but it wasn't my best. So it's tough with that too, like trying to balance showing your art as well as doing your art. So
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, capitalism mixed in with like the essence, the soul of a person trying to create, like from Like I'm a human trying to make something that hasn't been done before, or I'm trying to push the
Right.
edge of what I have done before even. Like it's hard to match up like, oh wait, what does that have to do with late stage capitalism? it's
I
it's
think too, like
wild.
a big thing that I have a struggle with is like I want to like I got into hair it kind of whirlwind of a bunch of different experiences and then like getting into this I'm like oh like I knew I was supposed to do this but I also feel like it's tough because I don't know like you're in the moment like part of me doing this is like I want to make people feel good, you know, I'm always there to make someone like the best thing for me like gratification is not like, oh yeah, like that looked great to me. It's like how that person feels. When that person's like, oh my God, like this is amazing. Like I feel so good. Like I wish I could go out right now. Like that's what I do it for. So it's kind of hard too, where you're like, I have to appeal on a, you know, behind a screen to show, you know, that this is what you can have, but it's hard to like show that, you know, so you have to appeal in a way where you want people to come to you. But I feel like I don't know, it's kind of hard when you're like chasing likes and things like that. It's like that's not what it's for. It's like I want to make people feel good. So it's hard when it's coming from you that you want other people to feel that, you know, satisfaction or that, you know, getting those likes and things.
Yeah, it's like when you chase the wrong thing, like, I mean, you kinda have to chase that thing, which is you posting on social media, but you
Mhm.
almost kind of attract the wrong parts of what you were trying to get because I mean, there's no like, as I'm just mindlessly say I wake up in the morning, I'm mindlessly scrolling in my bed through Instagram, and I see your post, it's not going to make me when I see that, I'm not going to say, "Oh, wow, that person experienced incredible happiness, joy, like the confidence they had that day. Wow." Like
Totally.
you obviously you don't feel that. Like it's not we haven't made that possible through our screens yet
Right.
anyway. So
Right.
what you see is almost what you're trying to sell. And it's interesting because it's suddenly in this marketplace. I mean, I get social media is kind of an inherently a marketplace anyway, especially nowadays, but it's you're suddenly competing against people that you weren't trying to compete against. It's like
Right.
now
Right.
you're all of a sudden like, "Oh, well, where do you rank against all the other hair people in the world?" You know, and you're like, "I'm not trying to I'm just trying to create what
Right.
I specifically create from this little corner of my life and my world, and I wanna make people happy." But when people see it, it's kind of, "Oh, we're comparing." You know, I actually see this, rappers is something I see this a lot with, which, you know, rappers get a lot of flack, but, like, these motherfuckers work hard on the gram. Like they go in and a lot of times I feel like I'll respect the heck out of them. Like and there'll be people who are really good. Like I'm scrolling and get like a 2 minute freestyle that's just fire,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
they're comparing it. They're like, well, he ain't Eminem. And it's like,
Right.
what? He
Right.
wasn't trying to compare to Eminem. Like, what about how good he is at what he does and like what he brings to people with what he has? We social media accidentally makes us compare everything to everything else.
Yeah. And I think too, that's a huge thing. And I talk about it all the time. I'm like, it's crazy to me that like there's so many creative people out there, you know, like, and you can take it to any industry. I love to take it to music because, you know, before COVID, one of my favorite things about Philly is like whatever kind of music you're into, you can find that music here, like live music. You can go to like a small little bar and get someone though who's local who's just playing. You're like, oh my God, like her voice is absolutely incredible. And it's just like it's hard because you're like, how do it's hard to make that step to where you're famous. It's like, how can we as a collective world population, like we know certain names, like, and that makes sense, you know, they get it out, but how is there not so many more names that, you know, you get to hear on music? Like, how is it every day I'm not hearing a new song, like hearing something, and it's just, it's hard to get to that next level where it's like, okay, like you made it, you're on that next platform. Like, so I think that's one thing that will be moving forward is, and we see it now, like with social media, um, like influencers. But there's like, I think at some point, and I think J. Cole has actually said this, that, you know, that at some point there's not going to be famous people because, you know, there's so many people that can branch out and you can get this widespread, you know, where people know you or follow you and see your stuff. So at what point do we stop like idolizing certain people and there's a wider platform, you know, there's enough to go around for everyone. So hopefully at some point we can get to a place where you can share. But I guess it starts with us, like I'm saying, like I don't like to get on social media and really push those limits and do those things because I feel like to do the things to get attraction goes against what I actually believe in myself is
Mhm.
like what you should do, to have a happy and positive life. Like you don't need this fame or, never chasing. I don't need to be liked by everyone. I just want to make good, solid connections with the people that I do meet.
100% said beautifully. I like that a lot. Yeah, I think I kind of wonder if okay, I saw this Reddit comment a while. It was been a while back now, but somebody was basically asking. I think it was before COVID. So they were basically asking what's different from when I was in high school that or what's something they were basically asking younger kids who are in high school right now. What's something that you experience now that I probably wouldn't believe or that was different from my day, back in my day or whatever? And the top comment was, "We don't really have cliques anymore. Everybody just hangs out with who they want to hang out with and like within their social community or mobile community. Like, so everyone's
Yeah.
kind of connected through social media and like our avatars on there. And they said there's not really much of cliques as much anymore. Uh,
Interesting.
yeah. And so I kind of wonder if maybe where fame is going is not like there's not gonna be so many household names where everybody in your house knows these certain people,
Right.
like there's we're gonna know Ellen DeGeneres, we're gonna know The Weeknd, like there is gonna be, people who there is generalized everybody knows about, but under one roof, it might be like, well, what mom is into is this stuff, and we don't know
Yeah.
any of the people, but in her world, in her social, mobile community,
Yeah.
like that's a famous person to her. And then me, because I study, motocross, I know the popular motocross guys. So maybe we'll just kind of fall more into our niches of who's popular for what we truly enjoy rather
That's
than just here's this person, here's Cardi B and everybody needs to love her.
right. Right.
Yeah.
I think too, like with that generation of, I mean, I think we had like MySpace. That was like the big thing that came out like when I was in high school. And then towards the very end, Facebook came up. And I remember my cousin was like, he's in college and he's like, wait, you have a Facebook? He's like, you don't have a college email. How do you have that? Um, but like MySpace was our social, outlet at that point. And I think now, like, I do young girls, who are in high school and they come in and like, their friends they're like, oh no, like she goes to a different high school. It's not about like who you go to school with or things like that. It's like you have these different connections and, they're always connected and they have all these different, different groups and things that they do. So that is actually, I talk about that all the time now with that. I feel like being connected to your phone all the time and having like social media be there when you're young and you're learning who you are, like feeling the pressure to post and, be yourself, but then, getting like bullying and things like that. Like it's one thing to go to school and deal with that when you're trying to figure out like, who am I? What do I like? But then to take that home with you and then have the, constant, like, I
Always
don't know,
on.
it's like a popularity contest all the time that you're constantly in. I feel like it's just got to be so tough.
Yeah, because we get kind of sucked into the avatars that we're trying to portray on here on social media. And, like we were just talking about MySpace. I mean, I loved MySpace. Like when it first came around, I wonder how much it truly changed me. As in, like, if I had never gotten MySpace at those, crucial ages of 14,
Yeah.
15, 16, whatever, I wonder like who I would be now. I wonder if I would care that much about social media now. I wonder if I would care about branding. I wonder if I would care about I don't know, a lot of the things that I'm into now. It's almost kind of like our first little toe dip in the water. I would and again, this isn't a bad thing. I enjoyed it. This was seriously like fun. Me and my friends would go like take photos like, oh, let's go down to the railroad tracks and take, with our skeleton fingerless
Yeah.
gloves and our eyeliner
Yeah.
and take photos. And then like, but we would go start to do things outside that we could then take from outside and put online. And now it's like making our social avatar.
Yeah.
And I
I
wonder.
think the answer to that though, like I think the answer is yes. Like you would be the same. It wouldn't, change anything because I think that's why social media is so big because we realize like we as people, we do like, that gratification from other people. We do like that, feeding our ego, if you will.
Mhm.
Um, But it is interesting too. You talked about like going out and taking your pictures. I remember, you go from MSN days where you're waiting for the computer to dial up and you get to sit and chat. You're tying up the phone line. Your mom's like, get off. I can't get any phone calls. But that, and I remember when MySpace first came out, digital cameras. So my mom got me this digital camera, but you couldn't see, there was no like display, so you're just taking random pictures. And we would go outside and it would hold 16 pictures. So we take 16 pictures, plug it into the USB, load them upload them to the computer. And then you're like, oh, I didn't like this. You go back out and take more. And then I just had my friend in from college, played softball with me, did her hair yesterday. And we're like, oh my God, we used to go out, and that's when actual digital cameras were the thing. And we would just go to a party for a night and we would take a whole album full of pictures and upload them to our social media or Facebook at that time. And I look back at the pictures now, I'm like, it's just crazy how much it has evolved in such a short time, honestly, 10 years ago. And
yeah, like you probably wouldn't post a majority of those photos now, but back then it was like you make an album for the night, and that was how we did social media.
I had to like hide all of them. I'm like, oh my God, there's so many pictures just like, out college partying. And yeah, it's like when you get to your older age, you're like, okay, like I'm a professional now. I can't be having these college photos be dug up. And that's the thing too. It's like so much with sharing. There's so often, especially with like everything that we've gone through, we've seen so many like huge events take place, with racial injustice stuff, and then like the Capitol riots and all this stuff. And you look at like cameras are everywhere, like videos are always being taken. There's so much that like if you are doing things that show your true character and you have, these bad things that, live within you, but they will be exposed. And that's something to, it's good. And it's just like, it's a wake up for a lot of people where you don't get to, carry on and do these things without any repercussions because someone's always watching.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the absolute truth. It's kind of weird. We almost, I don't think that we should self-edit ourselves so much. There's a balance there. I mean, I think the camera, or like noticing or realizing that a camera could be watching you or could be like filming you, is enough to wake up a lot of people and be like, oh shit, like I never really thought about what I said. I just said it. Or I never really thought about my actions. Like, of course those people said that it hurt their feelings when I said this, but they're just sissies. And now you got to be able to like, I wonder how that feels to a lot of these people when, they act crazy or they, maybe not act crazy. They act out of anger, or they don't have a lot of emotional control.
Yes.
They're yelling at people. I wonder how it feels to them to watch that video back of themselves, just veins splitting out, red face. They're screaming at another human being.
Yeah.
I wonder, I don't know. Again, we're at this influx, this like mixing pot of technology, just like clashing all these things and basically saying, hey, humans, like here's all the things that you weren't noticing you were doing. Wake the hell up. And we're in a mixing pot of it.
Right. I think it's really good. Like as much as there's, pressure in ways when we're using it for, trying to, it's good. You can share knowledge, but I think it's also like, I think this year's been super tough, but I'm thankful that this year took place because, certain little things like you reflect and get to see, okay, like what are people really experiencing? What are people going through? Like, where have I maybe turned my back or, brushed it off like it's not that important, or not even realizing, what someone's actually going through or experiencing. So it's helped me to just have a better understanding. I think with that, I always find myself to be very empathetic for people, and it's kind of pushing those barriers to go a little bit further. And, I think like the only way to make a better tomorrow is to, talk about the things that are issues. And, there has been a really good, I guess, push in like what I see people sharing. Like for instance, I love the jewelry that I make. It's just one of my clients. She's awesome. And she has a really big social media platform. And I've noticed since all of the racial injustice stuff and, human rights, equal rights, all of this, she's really used her platform to, share these things that a lot of people don't take the time to think about. And like, it's just really enlightening. Like, I find myself doing little side research, or, just reaching out to understand different communities that I've never taken the time to look at what they're going through or how they have been oppressed. And, trying to do things like even as simple as like having a little conversation around it with someone who may have a different view. It's like you wake that next person up. So it does help to kind of unfold and maybe hopefully, push towards a better tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. I think it's as much as the platform could be used for negative things, and there is negative aspects, but there is a lot of positivity there too. Again, we now get to point out to people. You have popular, like, hey, we listen to your opinion. We like what you have to say. Especially when it comes to, I imagine as young people, they're probably looking up at influencers, like just waiting, like you tell me how to be, and I'm going to be it, and I'm going to try
Right.
that on. I'm gonna see if that works for me and see if that's a part of me. So if we can, if influential people and people with big followings can really say, hey, this is important, and this is something, if you haven't ever thought about it, it's worth a few minutes. There's so much. It's, again, like we were talking about at the beginning, there's so much information. It's hard to know like where I got this tomato from, and I don't want to feel guilty about the
Right.
child slavery that when they picked it. But there is like a small, good, healthy amount of trickle of self-assessment of who you are, and the things that you say. I mean, we grew up in the same town, and I'm still here. I notice a lot of the things just by living in a small town, a lot of the things that I didn't stretch my mind on until I went somewhere else, or I visited somewhere else, or I said the wrong thing in the wrong situation. I was like, "Oh, fuck. I never, like, really thought about why I said that. I never really
Yeah.
thought about, like, why I would interpret things that way." So, it's important. It's also very triggering to a lot of people, though. Like, it's
Oh,
a like,
for sure.
people complain about other influencers or whatever trying to change, like, dude, just fucking post hair, man. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, what are you talking about? Like, don't we have to treat the social media thing and the human interaction, the human connection, as it actually is, not how we wish that it was, you know?
100%. And that there's so many industries. I actually just that made me think of one of the trainers that I've worked with. He's super, super open about, political beliefs and things like that. And he's not saying like, hey, this is how it has to be, but he's like, if he's experiencing something, he sheds light, and people will always be like, man, just stick to kettlebells, like, shut up, like stop. And he's like, you know what, honestly, like, you don't have to be here. I'm choosing to share this. Like, I'm not making you stay. Like, get lost. So
Mm,
that's the thing. You're always going to have like fallback with, haters,
right?
always, always having something to say. There's always the most negative people who want to say the most.
Yep. I mean, that's what I think. Social media, I almost think social media would be better if we just delete comments and likes. How about that?
Oh,
Just get
seriously.
rid of
Like,
it. Get rid of follow count, comments, and likes, and then give it a couple years. I'm sure a lot of interest would be lost. Like, people would be,
yeah,
there's no way to get popular. I don't really want to do it. But it would
yeah,
be interesting to see what kind of rises to the surface. What
yeah.
just based off of views or just interest in it, and not maybe people like it, but that's for the algorithm to know. I don't get to see the likes or something,
Right,
and
right.
that controls.
I like the idea of that. That would like, I don't know, I feel like take some pressure off. And I've never been the type like people be like, oh, like I'm gonna delete this and repost it because it didn't get that many likes. I'm like, what does it matter?
Yeah.
Like for me, I like social media because that's my portfolio. Like if you want to see my work, you can go to my page and you can view my work, so that to me, I'm like, it's not something that you have to print out and have this catalog of here's what I'm capable of. Like you can see what I'm capable of. So that's what's kind of pushed me to be more active with that is, all
Mhm.
right, show people, what you can do. So that way, if they're, considering getting their hair done, they have something to, consider your work as an option for them. And B, like if you ever move or go anywhere else, like you have this piece of your work, so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a portable portfolio.
Totally.
Mike Posner recently, I mean, he's not the only one to do it, but he came out with like this like mixtape or EP before a single or something. I might have sent it to you guys. It was like it was pretty cool. But anyway, essentially what he did was, it was kind of this artist move that at the beginning I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. And then afterwards I'm like, this is savage as fuck. He deleted everything from his
Yeah.
social medias and unfollowed everybody. And
Yeah.
it was I was really contemplating it because I've commented on this before. I never liked when people did that. I was like, why would you do that? That's a weird thing to do. But I
Mhm.
think it was because I was like insecure about ever doing that on my own to my own profile. But now that I don't know, I've changed my perspective on it. Now I think it's the most like G artist thing you could do is just delete
Yeah,
everything.
delete it all. Yeah. I actually, with his album, I liked at the beginning, the first time I went to listen to it, he had that little like segment. He's like, all right, if you don't have time to dedicate this where you can give your undivided attention, like don't listen. And so I was like, you know what? Like I actually really appreciate that. I love music. I always have. I feel like that's been a huge part of our existence. But I was like, okay, like I will actually set aside the time. And New Year's Eve, actually, we were going up to the Poconos, which is like the mountain towns of the East Coast here. And Lana was here visiting. So we were in the car. I'm like, do you guys care if I put this on? Like, I've been wanting to listen to it. So we listened to it on the way up to that. And, you know, like overall, the album, it was different than I expected, but I really liked the raw, like, exposure of it, you
Yeah.
know?
It's such art. Like it was really just a story. Like I I was involved the whole time. I was like, "Oh, like what's gonna happen next?" But then you're also, and then it comes to a song, so you can enjoy the song and there's a beat and
Yeah.
whatnot. And
Yeah.
but he's really trying to communicate a story that in the end communicates like a very real, raw human emotion. And that,
Totally.
dude, that's such fucking art. Like that's just savage. That's what, in this world of there's probably younger people likely probably listen to more singles than they do albums just
Yeah.
based off of our attention span and stuff. But there really is something, and even me, I listen to a lot of singles too, but there is something beautiful about an album, and especially, a little, spoken word sort of artistic poetic album like that is
Yeah.
really cool.
Anytime I listen to a new album, I will always like make sure that my shuffle's off and I'll start it the first song and then go through. Because I feel like a lot of times like you'll miss little things that are hidden within inside, that's like either a story or a certain transition from one song to another where it's like a second of like, oh, like that flowed because of this. Like, so I think it's important to like the first time I listen to an album to do it in order.
Yes,
Full
100%.
experience.
I totally agree. I mean, you're not going to take a book and like shuffle the pages and see
Right.
what story comes out. You gotta listen to an album as if you'd read just the same way you'd read a book.
I like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Hey, how long has it been now since you had moved to Philly? So like, how many years is it now?
So if you count the years that I was at Temple, I'm like just over a decade. So I was here 2009 and did 2 years at Temple, and then moved home because I was there for almost 2 years. Then I came back in 2013. So I've been here since March of 2013. So coming up on 8 years consecutive of like living out here.
How do you think, here's a big question, how
Mhm.
different do you think you would be now if you had never moved?
So much different. It's actually, I've like, just turned 30 and you get to this point where you're like reevaluating life and you're like, okay, what's next? Where do I go? What's in my future? And I just more recently, I've had a lot of like really deep, I feel like COVID's been good because it's brought a lot of things to the surface that I don't think if we were just on this like rat race of constantly moving, that I would ever, take the time to dissect and like reflect and look at my feelings. For a while there, I was like, you know what, like I'm out here and I'm going to eventually move out west. And I think with that was like some pressure of, okay, I'm away from my family. Um, and I came out here to kind of get away from things at that time. But then I realized like, my support system's out here. I have such a good group of people. Like in my toughest times, I came out here for their support. So, with me in the hair industry, like I have taken the time, I changed salons and have been able to reflect career wise. I'm like, okay, I do want a salon of my own at some point. And, why would I put pressure on myself to move home and open something up closer to family when I'd be starting over, when I have so much support out here? Like my friends, I spent so many holidays out here with their family. Like I have such a strong group of people. And that was one thing that like when Lana came out here and our good friend Michael came with, they were like, It's so beautiful to like come and be a part of like your friend group. Like you guys really have such an amazing thing.
Mm.
And Michael had actually said something too, because he had met Will's friends as well. He's like, he's like, we're always with people and like me friends back home. And in Seattle, like he's got his group. He's like, but I kept waiting to like meet the asshole. He's like, all right, yep, this one's gonna be the asshole. This one's gonna be the asshole. And he's like, I never met the asshole. He's like, you guys don't have that. He's like, you really have such a beautiful like support system that you have out here, and everyone's unique and everyone does their own thing and everyone's supportive of one another.
Mhm.
And so I just more recently like accepted like, okay, me moving away from home isn't me like running out on my life before. It's not like that's never me, that never was me. It's accepting like, okay, that was me. And now I'm growing and changing and I'm moving in a different direction, and it's okay to grow. It's okay to change. It's okay to, be away from your family and not take the guilt of, oh, you ran away from them. Like, no, like they're still my family. That's still my past. That's still part of me. But the best thing to do for myself is to do all that I can. That was actually, we did acid on New Year's Eve up in the mountains. It was all snowy, and I probably do it like once, twice a year. And I think that acid's such a beautiful thing, because I always learn. It's like you unlock like you break a code, or you get that extra little piece of the puzzle. You're like, oh, like you've learned things about life. And the one thing that kept coming to me that night was to honor yourself. And
Mm.
I think that was like, so often we're like worried about other people, and like, I don't know, you get like stressed out, like, and especially when you're like on drugs, it's like, oh, is she feeling okay? Do they feel okay? Are they? And it's like, the most important thing for you to do is actually take care of you. Because if you're taking care of you, well, then you take out, because I'm like, if I'm thinking this way about them, they're thinking the same way about me. So we'll never maybe meet that connection or that idea or that understanding of like, yeah, I'm good if you're good. Are you good? It's like, if I just do my part, that's all I really can do. That's all that's in my control. That really is benefiting everyone around me. So that was like a big takeaway from my acid New Year's trip. And that really has helped me to make the decision like, okay, I am okay being out here. It's what's best for me. And it's, like I said, it's not taking away from anything that I was, or, any, I guess there's no regret to feel. And also like, yeah, it has changed me a lot, but it's changed me for better.
Right. Yeah, that's so cool. I like that perspective because what, like, if you're so concerned on like what is this person thinking about me, or like what should I be doing differently, when you're really focused internally on like, okay, how, like, we're almost like inadvertently taught to reject that in a weird way, right?
Yeah.
Like it's almost like you, like, I don't know, self-care even, like analyzing like, oh, like how do I honor myself? What is that? Like who ever asked themselves that? How do I honor myself? Like how do you, like, and how much better is your day if you wake up and you put both feet on the floor and you're like, how could I honor myself today? Like how could I best honor like my internal being in the best of like what I want?
So
And then also, I mean, I think like allowing yourself to, I guess I'm just thinking about change and like how those moments can be truly powerful. Like a lot of, LSD or mushrooms, like a lot of times you could have those realizations that last. Like they'll you take them into your sober waking life, and
so
it
much.
changes kind of who you are. And it's like a little gift. And I think it's beautiful that you said, like your perspective changing and growing about moving away from your hometown, whereas you're like, oh, was I running from something, or felt that I was running from kind of my old life, or trying to deny it or whatever. But I think that is the beauty of life, and especially our modern day lives, is you notice that it's kind of in stages. I look back at my old self, and I'm like, oh, like I'm not like that at all anymore. But instead of feeling shame for it, I'm like, oh, I had to be that way, so now I could be like this. I
Yeah.
had to learn those lessons. So you kind of, uh, stop trying to like control so much, and just kind of okay, what that's what I needed back then at that age. But now that I'm this age, now that I'm 29, now that I'm 30, whatever, what do I need now? What's
Right.
right for me going forward? It's like we do get too caught up with trying to trying to fulfill something that's already left in a sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's that feeling of guilt. I realize like, okay, so if I'm constantly in the state of feeling like, well, I'm happy here and I'm progressing here and I'm doing better here, but I should move home because that's my family. Like, I should be close to them. It's like, well, if I'm feeling guilt in the present moment about that, then I'm not really moving forward in the place that I'm staying here because I'm like, I have this guilt because I'm staying here because I'm doing well. So it's like, just accept what it is. And as soon as you let go of that, then you're able to actually reduce the guilt because you'll be moving forward and doing things that are better in your life, that you don't have to feel bad because you're like, look, like again, it's if I'm taking care of me, that's the most important thing for my parents to feel like, okay, like we don't have to worry about Crystal. She's happy. She has a support system. She's moving forward in her career. Like we don't have to worry about her. So that kind of helps to take care of that guilt that was hanging over my head the whole time. So you actually, as soon as you do that, you can really do the things that you need to do in order to make yourself feel good, because that's ultimately what we want for, when you think about like caring for someone else too, it's like you want them to be happy. But and I feel like in relationships too, the honoring yourself is so important, because so often, like when you look at arguments, when I reflect back to things I do and how I acted, I'm like, okay, was that actually, the way that did that happen because it happened and things were off, or did that happen because you weren't taking care of you, and so you let things kind of spiral and get to a point where it's like it's not your fault that I'm feeling like this, it's my fault. So that has actually alleviated a lot of issues to any sort of compromises or things that happen, because you get to like reflect and be like, okay, like I actually wasn't taking care of myself. Like I wasn't working out and I was eating terrible. And, then I'm like, felt bad about myself. My confidence was down. And so then these little things you reflect, like, and it's simple little things too, like, I guess like little tiffs will happen and it's like, are you mad at me? And it's like, well, if I'm asking if you're mad at me, then is it something that I did, or is it you're mad at me? So I think it's really important to like honor yourself. And that has been something that has like stuck with me. Like, wait, stop, reflect. Is this because of them, or is it because you're not doing something for you?
Yeah, that self-sovereignty is very important. Yeah, I really like that perspective. Yeah, because we get older and we see young people. We'll see a little kid. Imagine a 6-year-old girl throwing a fit, and her mom's like, "Oh, she's super hungry. She needs a nap." She doesn't know because she's still young and her brain is still forming, and
Right.
so she leans on her mom, to like, "Oh, I'm grumpy and I need to eat. Okay, thanks, mom. Like you're gonna make me
Yeah.
a sandwich or whatever." But
Yeah.
we get older and we kind of forget that we still kind of have these little boy, little girl things going on. Like
Totally.
we'll be we're yelling at our significant other, we're kind of like being a dickhead to them, and then in the end, and then you have a bowl of mac and cheese or something, and you're just looking at him. I love this guy. Yeah, I think he's so great. And you just realize the whole time you're just kind of hungry, kind of hangry, and
Completely.
it really is, you don't got to get mean to yourself about it, but it really a lot of things, a lot of our emotions, a lot of our moods get carried away based off of like you said, oh, I haven't been working out. I haven't been eating correctly. You know, dude, if you drank alcohol last Saturday and now it's Wednesday, you still might be feeling some of the effects from that alcohol. Like, I mean, technically, scientifically, you still are, but it's kind of hard a subtle body to notice. But yeah, we have to police ourselves in a maybe not police ourselves, but we just got to be aware that we're humans with emotions and
Yeah.
emotions happen.
Will and I actually had a really good conversation the other night too. We were just kind of talking about like, I don't know how to put it into words. We were talking about like how so often like our natural tendencies are to like do things so that we're comfortable, right? Like always making sure that we're comfortable. But when you really look at things, like your growth and things that happen that are beneficial to you happen often when you're uncomfortable, like when you're struggling, like in times of like things that don't feel good, a lot of good can come from. So it's the importance of like accepting that struggle or accepting being uncomfortable and knowing that, okay, like it's not going to feel good, but knowing that it's got a good outcome or there's something good to come of it. So it's important to not always try to make ourselves like, yep, I want to feel happy all the time, or I want to feel good. I want to feel like secure. It's those moments where you aren't secure, where you are struggling, where you are, that
You're
helps you to
okay with
like,
it.
okay, how do I get comfortable? From here, what do I need to do to make myself get to comfortable? And as
Yeah.
soon as you get comfortable, that's when you stop growing. So you always want to have that little push to like, okay, I'm comfortable now. How do I get uncomfortable again so I
Yeah.
can work toward that next stage of, all right, now I'm comfortable here.
And you'll brush up against stuff that's just saying, hey, it's time to grow. You got to grow from this.
Yeah.
It's my friend Brandon and I, Brandon Cruz, who he runs Wild Productions. We made that video together a
Yes.
couple weeks ago. He's super dope. He's really good at what he does. But so we went snowboarding a few weeks ago, and our vibe together, like when him and I are hanging out, dude, we're seriously a couple of hippies. Like him and I just we riff so well together that our heads are just way up in the clouds anytime we're hanging. He just brings me up super high. But we get up there and we kind of got a little bit of a late start. No complaints there. We were like, yeah, no big deal, whatever. No, it's fine. We'll just eat breakfast and get on the road. Already started off to a good start. We get there and the parking lot's full. And so we had to park pretty far away. So we're like, well, it looks like we're gonna have to walk a little bit, or we're gonna have to park somewhere unideally and catch a shuttle. We get our
Mhm.
gear on and we're like talking to people, and we realize that there's no shuttle, and it's about like a mile and a half, 2 miles up to the lifts.
Mhm.
And it wasn't even like we didn't even skip a beat. It was just we just started walking, and we were talking about it. We could have complained. We could have like walked up there and like, this sucks, dude. Like, let's put our thumb out and try to get a ride or whatever. And we did get a little bit of a ride at the very end. But what I'm getting at is we started saying this thing that I kind of say to myself, but putting it into words out loud was, this is not my preference. And
Love that.
it's crazy how powerful that is, because we could be catastrophic about like, oh my gosh, this thing is happening, like this is the worst. But the truth is, if you can really just say, this isn't my preference, but I still am the one to deal with it. I'm still the only person to have to go through this. You can't put that over everything, like someone who's experienced great levels of pain. You can't be like, well, you didn't get your preference, bro. But
No, it's
there is a
what
lot of just realizing, you know, when you're being overly dramatic, when you're being overly catastrophic, or overly, moody, or whatever it is, you just got to realize, oh, I'm just not getting my preference. And it's up to me how I respond to this thing. It has nothing to do, there's no innate, life is not happening to you. Life is happening for you. It's your response to the things that are going on in the exterior world.
Yeah, that's one thing that we talk about often. Like living in a city, like there's times where you deal with traffic and like you can sit in that traffic and be like, what the fuck? Like, why isn't it moving? Like, and get angry. But like, ultimately, it's not going to change the outcome. So why spend that time just working yourself up when it's like, okay, I've learned this. Like, I should leave an extra 30 minutes earlier. Like, in this time, like, let's maybe not plan to leave at this time. And,
Mm,
you reevaluate things, but there's no sense in getting super, super worked up over something that's taking, it's up to you of how you respond to that. That
yeah,
was one
you
thing,
really.
emotions are tough with that, is always challenging yourself to, all right, check my emotions, I'm feeling this and like it could go to the extreme here, how can I bring it back in?
Yes, absolutely. You've got to learn to self-regulate, especially in this modern, fast-paced technological world. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of information coming in, a lot of information going out. We've got to self-regulate. We got to honor ourselves. We've got to be polite to ourselves, and just be, oh, I was caught up in that. Oh, dang, I was just kind of angry. Hey, sorry, buddy. Like, sorry to do that. I'm working on this, whatever. Most of the time, if this has to do with some sort of interaction or argument with another person, or you're moody to another person, majority of the time you just tell them, half hour later, hey, sorry about that, man. Just kind of got hungry, little cranky, didn't mean to yell at you, or whatever it is. And most of the time they're like, oh wow, thanks so much, no big deal, that's cool, I get angry too.
It
So
does. It's like a revolve, it's a snowball effect, right? Like you can either have it snowball and have it be, this huge terrible thing, or you can have it snowball and like use that to help you build something.
yes, absolutely. So I wanted to switch over to, I always think of of hairstylists are the ultimate counselors. Do you ever like feel like that? And not in like a, oh man, everybody just comes in here and gets everything. But right now, I feel like it seems to me like you would likely probably have to be focusing a lot on your like emotional physical health right now so you can show up as strong because people are going through it right now, man. Everybody's going through it. And when they sit in your chair, like you might be one of the first people that like has really listened to them in a while. And I'm sure naturally, the beauty of the, client customer relationship that you guys can have, I'm sure you guys probably do get like pretty open with each other, or the client gets open with you. So what have you noticed, in the I guess over the course of all your years of doing this and doing hair and working with clients, but especially with COVID, like what's been coming up a lot, and what have you found yourself giving advice for or saying a lot?
This year's been very interesting because at the beginning, like March 15th was the day that we closed. And we go from, like I said, the super fast pace, everyone's going and doing. And then it was like, we didn't go back to work until June 23rd. So during those 6 months, and a lot of people are working from home during that time, so things have changed and their day to day is much different, but they're still preoccupying their brain. So the beginning of COVID for me was like, okay, like how do I find something to make myself feel like I'm being productive. So working out was a huge thing for me. I would like meet up with my friends. I'm like, all right, guys, meet me on Zoom. And I would take them through a workout. And that was like what kept my sanity. And then fast forward to June and people are, they're anxious to get their hair done. You have a whole mix of people. Some people are here and some people are down here. Some people haven't left their house or talked to anyone or gone anywhere. And some people are like, I can't fucking wait for this shit to end. So it's been interesting and each person's very different. But what I've found with being back and kind of the ups and downs, because then summer kind of hit. And like when I first went back, people were kind of lax because weather's nice, they're outside, they're able to kind of like let go of the COVID stuff a little bit, at least where it's not like thinking or like your every thought. And then move forward into like the past few months. And it almost feels like we've regressed in that sense where people are kind of, they get scared again. We had the second wave of like people getting very sick and, people are now been working from home. But the interesting thing is like a lot of people haven't had any like human, like touch, like actual connection. So that's been something that I feel very privileged in a sense to be able to constantly have that human connection. And, sometimes people are very wary and you can feel that, like hesitancy. And it's been, talking to them about, what's changed in their life, like how is it adapting to working at home? And, some people are like, this is actually really nice. Like I get so much more work done. I get to have my morning breakfast and work out and like I'm on my own schedule. And some people are like, I am so sick. Like if I have to sit in my house, having breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then I get off work and I'm still in that same environment, it's hard to separate the work and life balance. So all over the place with that. But, I was anxious to come on here and talk. And I'm like, why would I be anxious to talk? Like, this is what I do for a living. I literally like, that's what I do. And it's so, so nice. I feel like I learned so much from my clients and I, in turn, hope that they feel the same. But it's really, really, it's rewarding. You get to, when people have a bad day, you get to come in, you're like, all right, we're not going to talk today. You're just going to sit, you're going to enjoy this. I'm going to give you a nice head massage. And then, you're going to feel elevated. By the end, they're talking, they're happy, they're smiling. So that's really, really nice. And two, it's like, I get to like hear about all these good books to read and good movies to watch. And like, that's been the whole topic of, what are you watching? I'm like, what haven't you watched? Like, so That's been a definite thing, but it's nice too. And I always try to make a conscious effort to check in, like, how are you doing? Like, how's the pandemic affecting you? Like mentally and physically. And so it's been really, really nice to be able to be going into work and talking to people and, being that outlet for them to let loose whatever they're feeling.
Yeah, I'm sure, Crystal, you provide a lot of people with immense value by just, of course, elevating them, like making them look good, which gives us more confidence. Obviously, just human touch, getting that oxytocin, the chemical release when we touch each other, like that trust of, because standing in line 6 feet apart. Someone gets 3 feet and you're like, what are you doing, dude? Like, what you
Yeah.
doing? We're doing the 6 feet thing, don't you know? And so really breaking those barriers. I'm sure you probably noticed, just the tension in people's neck and shoulders and back of their head, even just like from when they first sit down versus when they get up. And that's super wonderful. I think um, comedians, for example, they bring, they're telling a story, but it's not so much about like the actual words they're using. It's kind of about the feeling. Like they want to make people laugh. They want to make people feel joy. And however
Yeah.
they can do that, it's like everybody has their own specific, authentic ways of doing that. But yeah, in hairstylists, you get to make people feel joy and confidence. And I think it's really important, especially right now, because like I said, we're separated. We're not touching each other. We're not. Yesterday I went to piano lessons yesterday, and I had met her boyfriend or husband for the first time, and without thinking about it, just because I was like in their home, she just does piano lessons at her house. I was like, oh, hey, hey man, nice to meet you. I shook his hand, and then right afterwards, I was like, crap, like I feel bad because I hope I wasn't just too intense
Yeah.
for him. And so he's like, oh crap, I'm gonna, because there's this weird unspoken, I want to respect your boundaries because I understand if you're totally terrified still because, I've been there with the COVID stuff. So it's still this interesting thing. So it's very cool that you can really break down a lot of those barriers by just doing what you do and showing up and doing it well and just being there for them, holding that space.
It is really nice. And it is like, it's tough because there's this like level of like, all right, and my clients are coming in like, can I hug you? And like, I'm like at this point where, we're wearing masks, we're, protective over there. I'm like, yes, like if you want a hug, I will give you a hug.
Okay.
But with that too, like there's so much where people like, you can tell like they'll first come in and they may feel some way. And then by the end they feel another. For instance, the other day I had a client and I like COVID. Not that I like COVID, but I'm thankful for COVID slowing us down in the sense of like, I really do like, I take more time and just like thinking about like what people are going through. And I like reach out to people. So it's not so much about like, oh, did I make them feel pretty? It's like, you want to connect with people. You want to check in and see how they're doing. And this woman, I hadn't seen her for a while and she crossed my mind. So I was like, I'm just going to shoot her a text. And she's like, Crystal, you must have ESP or something, because she's like, I was just thinking about you. She's like, I'm actually going to call this afternoon to make an appointment. She's like, I've been having like a really tough couple of months and I'm just really thankful you reached out. So felt super good about that. She came in the other day and I never, with COVID restrictions, I try not to have too many people in at once, but it was just me and one other stylist. So I was finishing up with my client and her color was processing. And so I'm finishing up and I come over and she's like, hey, she's like, I'm sorry. She's like, I have to be out by this time. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like I felt bad that like I felt I didn't like ask her when she had to be out. And it's never usually a thing. And we talked and like had a good start to our thing, but at the end, like I was like, all right, well, let me just trim you, like I'll get you blow dried so you can leave out. And like she left and I was just like, I felt so unsatisfied because she had earlier reached out, saying she was going through a lot. And I felt like I couldn't give that last final, like, I was rushing through the end. I didn't get to take my time and I wanted to make her feel good. Right. So a couple of days go by and just last night I was like, all right, I'm going to send her a text because we talked about a book that I had read. And I was like, she likes like historical fiction. And I read this awesome book about World War II and it's like a romance novel. So just sent her a picture of it. I was like, hey, I was like, just want you to know I'm thinking about you. Like, I'm so bummed that I didn't get to take the time to, give you a good full service. And she's like, I was actually just going to text you. She's like, I'm so sorry. She's like, I shouldn't have left like that. She's like, and she's like, I'm just going through so much and like my emotions are all over. So it was just nice to like have this full circle thing of, checking in and wanting to make her feel good. And then I felt like I let myself down because I was like, oh, I'm going to change her day around.
Yeah.
And then I didn't do that. And then I'm like, shit. So it's been all good though. Like, so if people are feeling a lot right now, but it's nice to be able to take that step and kind of push the boundaries on things to help them.
Yeah, we really put a lot of pressure on ourselves right now, don't we? It's like,
So much.
I mean, it's such a beautiful thing though that you really approach your job, in as many aspects as you can as, I get to improve this person or improve this person's day. I get to like talk to them. I know they're going through some stuff. We can chat about it and it's going to help them out or whatever. And you want to show up as that person. And then it's also cool, just like we were saying, sometimes we get a little moody or sometimes we get a little caught up or sometimes we get, there's a lot going on right now. It's
Yeah.
immense. It's crazy. And so the fact that you guys are able to, after a couple of days, text each other or contact and say like, hey, it's all good. It's all, like I was thinking about you,
Yeah.
I think that's pretty powerful. It's something to remember, with all the news media and social media, there's very much this narrative that we all know of, us versus them or the other guys or the bad guys or they or them or whatever. And I think we've got to remember that we're all part of this. We're all like, we all have almost a responsibility just as like citizens to each other of remembering like, hey, we're all going through this right now. We're all going through some level of this. Like, like you said, some people are doing really well from this. Some people needed this time in interiorly and to take the time with themselves and self-assess and readjust and maybe wonder why they're doing their business or reassess their business, whatever it is. But a lot of people, especially extroverted people, I feel like who are used to being around all
Oh,
day or being around other people, where we're all just going through it. So as long as we can always cut through the bullshit of what everybody says we should be caring about and just, put your hand on their forearm and say, hey, are you good? Because I got you. If not, like if you need to talk, let's go talk, and that's
and with that, when you're reaching out, making sure that you're coming from a place that you can, I guess, make sure that you take the time for yourself and that you can see like when you're feeling off that you don't extend, can't pour from an empty glass. I always say, like,
Mhm.
if you're struggling, don't be afraid to, take the steps to take care of that because it's important, because otherwise you try to fix the way you're feeling by, all right, let me do this for them. Let me do this for, let me make her feel better. And if you're not doing that for yourself, then you really can't give to others because you'll just deplete yourself. And that's when you get to the tough point of like, okay, like how do I move forward from here?
Yes. Yeah, I mean that's very true. Taking care of yourself is the best way to take care of other people. You got to take care of this vessel before you
Yeah.
can help other people take care of theirs. That's for sure. Um, hey, do you remember when we went? It's been, I don't remember how many years. It's been quite a few years now, but I went over after one of my shows. I think I was working in
Atlantic City.
Oh, yeah, 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 I was working in
Atlantic
Atlantic
City.
City and came
Yeah.
back over, and then, dude, we just had such a good time. I mean, I totally agree with what, Mike and Lana were saying about your friends, like, literally just such wonderful people, like, all Will's friends, just so welcoming. I felt like I had, like, such a vibe with everybody. Everyone was so
Yeah.
accepting, all your friends, all his it was so great. Everybody was so wonderful, but, we went to so one cool place we went to was, a thrift store where we found a sweatshirt, Kelso High, which is wild.
Also high school
That was
sweatshirt.
wild. And then also, remember the warehouse? Like,
Okay,
we
you
went
know
to, like,
what's so crazy? The
yeah,
warehouse that you walked in and it was like the secret room. There was that swing and the bar and it was
yeah.
dark. Like
There's
I had
literally
no
a dude who's,
idea.
like, right this way, and he's, like, moving plywood over. It's like it was so crazy.
I'm like trying to figure out what I'll have to like send a text and be like, yo, really, where was that? Because that was the most like I felt like we were on like a little magical.
We went in
I
another dimension.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Describe this. We'll mention the Kelso sweatshirt thing, but describe this. Okay, so we're out. We're having drinks. We went to a
Yeah.
couple different places. We had a really super fun night. Honestly, it was a great
Yeah.
night.
So bars open at or close at 2. So I remember it was like getting close to 2 o'clock, and I have a lot of friends in nightlife, and they're like, "Oh, we can go to this spot." And so I feel like it was on Columbus Boulevard, which is down like South Philly. There's a bunch of like larger, big buildings. Um, it's like a warehouse, and there's a front entrance. I think it might have been. It's like a strip club now in the front part,
Hmm.
but there's this back door entrance. And so we went up that, you like walk up the stairway, and then it was like an empty hallway. And there was like, some windows at the end, but the one door you open and then you're in like it was probably like 800 square feet.
Yeah.
Dark. There was a bar. It was like, I feel like it was like very like black and red and
Yeah. Yeah.
very dimly lit. And then that little stage with like the big wooden swing.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, very cool people, very, very chill. But we went there for a couple hours and continued our night on. I have to double check and see where that is though, because
Yeah.
that's like one of the mysteries of my
Dude,
event.
that place was so inspiring to me. I remember I feel like my last house in the basement, like my like little studio I had there, I was very inspired by that night that we had. Like because I remember they had this section of the wall where people had written kind of like profound, you know,
Yeah,
like hippie philosophical thoughts or like kind of
that like
shower
art
thoughts.
feel.
Yeah, and then there's actual, like, beautiful art too, and it was
Yeah,
just this pl there's, like, always something to look at, and you're, like, reading profound things as you're and it had this very it also had this very, like, VIP experience to it in a weird, like n
exclusive.
yeah,
Yes.
it was, yeah, and so, y that experience was just wild, like, how our night just trickled there, and it was this little hole in the wall for, like, a certain amount of people at a certain time in the night, and man, that was cool as shit. That was, like, the best way to I don't know if that was my first time in Philly, but it was second time maybe?
Yeah, I think it was your second actually, um, because I was at my new apartment with Melissa. But
Right.
that's the thing that I love about Philly is like I said, I came out here and I had softball, so it was nice. I had my group of people, but I always say, like, if you're coming here, like, no matter what you're into or um, what your beliefs are or what kind of music you like, whoever you want to be, there is something here for you.
Mm,
And like food, there's so much good food. It's just so diverse and there's so much opportunity for you to truly be yourself. That's why I will forever appreciate Philly for allowing me to become me here. There was no like cookie cutter way you have to do it like this. It's like come as you are.
yes, I agree with the good food, shout out stuffed buns for sure.
Yeah.
We went to a couple other good a couple really good places too, but, we talked about this actually, like, I called you not long after my not really that recent anymore, but after my breakup, I called you, and that was a lot of what our conversation was is kind of I was like, I kinda wanna, like, get out of here. I kinda wanna, like, just go experience the world. I want to wanna check it out. I wanna see what's up, and that was a lot of our conversation is kind of like, how freeing it can be to,
Totally.
not just leave your hometown, but to go to a place that is so accepting of, like, you just being the fullest extent of your being, and that's I totally get that vibe from Philly. I felt very comfortable there. Everybody was very welcoming. I didn't feel, there's no, like, tension I had. I just felt like I could just try to, be myself, whatever that means.
Yeah. I think the challenging thing in any situation and as we're supposed to change, we're supposed to grow. And I think the hardest thing is, we do that at different rates. So it's tough when you're around people who are always there and they're like, wait, you don't think like that, or you don't do that.
I
Like
know you. That's
it's
not
hard
you.
to break, yeah, it's hard to break down yourself when you're constantly being challenged by the people around you. So that's the one thing, the people that I have here, I'm so thankful for them. Like a lot of my connections started because of the girls I played softball with. And like I said, I just saw the one did her hair yesterday. And she went from, being, she was in communications, just doing whatever. And now she's going to school for nursing. My other friend, Rachel, she went to school and now has a food truck. Like we all have like gone to school, done our thing. And then we're like, oh, pivot, we're going to do this. I became a hairstylist. Like, so we're always there to support each other. Like, and that's, I think the important thing is being around people who, when you do change, it's not like, why are you changing? It's like, all right, what can we do to help? Like,
Mm,
we're behind you. Like, and there's always going to be times again, like getting uncomfortable, times of struggle, times of, doubt. And in those times, it's about being like open to accepting that. Like, okay, this is part of it. This should be happening. Like that it's okay that you feel that way. It's okay that you're questioning this. Like, I understand why you're thinking that way. However, you can do this or that. And so it's important to be able to accept someone else changing, and understanding what, going through that can be like and just support. So it's
yeah,
very thankful for people.
what came up for me is I forget who exactly has said it this way, but, courage is action in the face of fear, not the absence of fear, and I think that sometimes certain people like just off of their reactions to like what you tell them or what you're doing with your life, like how incredibly encouraging it can be to still take action in the face of fear when just one person is like, all right, bro, like, yeah, maybe you should give that a shot. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah, you were, yeah, I think you'd be good at that. Cool. And that could be like, that could seriously spark an entirely different life path for someone by just having someone that's encouraging or not. Um, I find, let's say family, for example, family can sometimes be the first people to say, like, "Ooh, are you sure you wanna do that, hon? Are you sure you want" because they care about you. They don't want you to they don't wanna see you fail. They don't wanna see you, run out of money. They don't wanna see you whatever, because they love you how you are, and they're like, "Well, you stay the same, and that'll be fine, and you're great how you are. Why would you wanna change?" But if there's something internally where you're wanting to grow, to change, to explore new sides of yourself, to step into a new stage of your life, that one person who's just saying, "Hey, like, I would accept you if you did that. I
Yeah,
think it'd be cool if you tried to do that." That can be very, very encouraging.
absolutely. And I think too, it's like, with the comfort thing, it's like, okay, I feel like I can level myself up if I do this. However, it's going to set me back financially, or it's going to take a few years for me to get there. It's like some people are scared to get out of their comfort zone and take that risk of, seeing what they're capable of. And so I think it's important to keep people around you that keep you grounded. They're not like, all right, quit your job and go, you're going to write a book, but also if you eventually want to write a book, it's, okay, what can we do to help you push the boundaries and allow yourself to be able to, you know, take those chances.
Right. Yeah, instead of, whereas some relationships you'll be around that are just like, "You're gonna write a book? What do you have to write about?" Or the the just kinda like back to where you were saying, people accidentally like, they think they know everything about you, It's just like when you go to your family Thanksgiving, sometimes your uncle sees you as the 16-year-old version of yourself and not like the grown ass 30-year-old adult, you know?
Oh
So
yeah, totally.
yeah, being around like-minded people, and I think more and more people are doing that. I think as maybe it's just something that happens with age too, as you kind of grow out of your own like young bullshit even, or your young non-believing in yourself. You kind of start to notice that you enjoy being around people who are encouraging for your future self, not just the person who they wish you would stay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one thing, like I say too, with like family. It's tough because your family is your family, and like that's, we grow up, and of course, like we're influenced by them. And I think the important thing is like, I have a lot of friends who have, found out that things that they've been doing or the direction that they're going isn't for them, or their sexual orientation is different than what they've exposed. And so I think it's hard to press the boundaries, and to sometimes your family who you are the closest with are the hardest ones to be able to open up to who you really are. So it's important to be able to look at things and find a balance. And like, just because you may do something that they may not see in that moment as what's right, if you know that it's right for you, it's important to be able to take those steps and to keep pushing one foot in front of the other. And maybe right away they won't see that it's right, but if you're doing what's right for you, then you will never be let down. So, and I think a lot of people have gotten to that point where it's either scary or they're unsure, and maybe there are some wavering things that are tough. Like for me personally, like moving out here, it was like, okay, and then when are you coming home? When are you coming home? When are you coming home? And then to finally be like, okay, like I'm really happy here. I have a good support system. Like, and then with that, they're like, we're so proud of you. Like, we don't worry about you. It's nice that you have these people.
Beautiful, yeah.
I'm never like concerned about if you're okay. We know you're okay. So those things that were really tough, and that I was super scared to like finally be like, oh, I don't know when I'm coming home. That was like when they were like, you're all right, so
Mhm.
just pushing past those boundaries. And then if people don't support you, then it's their loss. And at some point they'll either see that, oh, they made the mistake, or they'll see things your way, and that's, that can come. But it's just important to live authentically to yourself, because that's at the end of the day at our last, I guess, decision making and things like that. If you do things that feel good for you.
Right. Yeah. You got to trust that inner guidance, that inner intuition, that, your soul, your essence, your whatever you want to call it, whatever feels right to you. I mean, we all have some sort of connection to, regardless of how you get there, whatever wordings, like some internal being of like, this doesn't feel right. This is where your gut feeling is. It's where your like your ultimate decision making, when it's not based off of just trying to impress other people or do what other people want for you. We all have this thing where this just feels right for me, so I need to do it. And yeah, I think we should definitely encourage people to lean into that, and then also encourage, try to notice when we're maybe accidentally being a little, like, holding on a little too tight, maybe as family members or something, or even friends, and just allowing people to follow their intuition, I think is very important. Hey, I was thinking, so I think you were probably pretty young when you started softball. You've been into sports for a long time. So what was your transition like after sports? Like what was that about? Because you can give like a little bit of a bio for people who don't know like any of your accolades when it comes to sports, and then kind of what was your transition out of that?
Yeah. So it's interesting. Like, traveled all my weekends in high school. I was playing travel softball and knew I wanted to get a scholarship. I had no idea what I wanted to go to school for, but I knew I wanted to play softball. So I ended up getting a couple different offers, a lot of East Coast schools. I got recruited late in my senior year. And when I was 2 or 3, my dad worked for Boeing. So we lived in Philadelphia for like a year, 2 years maybe. But so I viewed some schools in like South Carolina or North Carolina, New York, and Philly, and just really meshed with the people when I came on my official visit. And also I was like, all right, like, I lived here when I was younger. Like, it felt like it was a part of me somehow. So came here freshman year, had a great year. Sports wise, academically wise, I really struggled. I thought I wanted to do physical therapy. And then I found out with traveling and playing sports, very, very difficult. Just high demand of a lot of like studying, a lot of labs and stuff. So then my sophomore year, it's really interesting. My coach was like, all right, look, I want you to get tested. And he's like, I think you have ADD. Like, I want you to get on medication. So that was a whole whirlwind of thing that year. I look back at the amount of Adderall that they put me on, and I'm like, it's literally insane. I was on like 80 milligrams a day. We'd wake up at 5 a.m. for weights, and then you would go to classes. And then we had to take a bus out to Ambler, which was like a 35-minute ride. So after class is 2:30, you catch the bus, you go practice, you get home around like 8 o'clock at night, and then you study, and then you go to bed, and you wake up and do it again, traveling on weekends for games and stuff like that. But when I started the medication, they would have me take 20 milligrams in the morning and then 2 in the afternoon. And I was just like a fucking machine.
Yeah,
and school, I would switch to communications because they're like, it's the easiest thing to do if you're unsure about what you want to do with that or with school wise. And so I was in the best shape of my life, but also just so unhealthy. Naturally we had the partying and stuff like that, but just like I was running on amphetamines, and
right.
I'd go to the gym in the morning and work out for like our actual weights. And then by the time I was getting done, I still had so much energy that I would go and run, 3 miles on the treadmill before I went in, and then studying, and then you're waking up and doing it all over. And then I got injured. My freshman year, I had retore my knee, and that was a quick fix, but that was at the end of the season. Sophomore year, pretty early on, I had hurt my shoulder. When I went in for my MRI, they were like, yeah, like you partially tore your rotator cuff, but you're young, like you should be able to rehab and be able to play. So spent all this time like rehabbing, and I remember I was getting ready to get clearance to play. Felt good, and I threw one last ball at the end, and I like just a shooting pain. And I like played it up. I'm like, I'm fine. I'm good. I'm good. Like, yep, ready to go. And I get to the bus. And I remember calling my dad, just sobbing. I'm like, I'm not okay. Like, I'm so hurt. Like, and he's like, like tell them that you're not feeling right. And it'd been like at this point, probably 3 months of me rehabbing. And I'm like, in my head, they're telling me that I should be fine. So I'm like, am I a hypochondriac? Like, is there something wrong with me? And so I finally went into the office. I'm like, I can't fake this. Like, I'm in a lot of pain. So I went in and I did a contrast, like a dye contrast MRI. And they're like, we're so sorry. You actually have a fully torn labrum and a partially torn rotator cuff, and we have to do surgery. And so when I was going in for a consultation about that, they're like, you have like a 70% recovery rate. And I'm going from being, a full ride starting player to, we don't know, it depends on your recovery, what will come after this,
Right.
And at that time too, I had, my mom was home, and I have an older brother who's had years of issues with addiction. And I just felt like my mom really needed me then. So I was there. Like I said, I went there to play softball, and school was kind of like, all right, like I'm doing this because that's the route that you're supposed to take, without any, like, I guess, real idea of knowing what I wanted for myself. So when I had that opportunity to reflect and look at things, I was like, all right, I'm gonna go help my mom. Like, I'm gonna go be there for her, be closer to my family. And so moved home right away, dealt with my injury, and that was a big part of it too, is going from like taking all that Adderall and then coming home to a normal day where I'm not waking up at 5 a.m. and I'm not doing stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I'm still taking this. I felt like a crazy person. So it was a long time of adjusting to just normal life. And I had moved in at home first, and then like my mom and I it didn't work with us being home. So I moved out and moved up to Bellingham. That's when I was in Bellingham for about 6 months. And then I was getting to the point where I'm like, okay, like what's next for me? I thought I was going to go to school right away. Again, still hadn't figured out what I wanted to do. And with the shoulder being such a, like, I couldn't reach my back seat for the longest time. And so I didn't think, hair never even crossed my mind. So it wasn't until I'd been home. And again, my sister and I were going to move in with my mom for a little bit. And she's like, oh, like this situation came up, and we ended up getting a lease for, in Kelso for a year. And after that was like, okay, well, like, let's figure out like what comes next for you. Lana was kind of in the same situation where she had gotten her associates and she was going to go to a 4-year, and we were both like, what do we want to do? And I still had a bunch of connections from the girls that I played with. They're like, come out here, move back. Like, we want you back out here. And so I was just looking for myself at that point. So I loaded up the car, loaded up the dogs. Lana came with me. And it was like a good, that was 2013. So like good 3 years of kind of just stumbling around. I got a good job with some friends working as a staffing coordinator just because of connections. And it wasn't until I was doing that for a year, had to take out my piercings and hide my tattoos. And I remember I like shaved the side of my head. They're like, can you part your hair the other way? And I finally one day was like, fuck it. Like, I don't want to be someone I'm not every day. So I looked into hair school. I thought I wanted to go for makeup at first, and then got there and totally fell in love with the hair thing. And looking back, I'm like, for all the dances, for all, like, I used to be getting ready in college, and my friends would be, can you do my makeup and do my hair? And I found it's like, guys, like, I'm not getting anyone ready because I'm always getting you ready. And then you're like, come on, Crystal, we gotta leave. So it's always been a passion, but it was really nice. It took a good 3 years to find like something that I was good at, a passion, something that made me feel as good as, playing softball did. So definitely a whirlwind of trial and error, and it just kind of stumbled into it. And then once I found out that that was something that I could do and feel good and got excited about, then it was just hit the ground running. So
yeah, I think stumble through is the perfect word for it, because you think you're going to have this certain trajectory, or you don't even think about it, and you're just doing. You're just like waking up as the machine every day, just working, because you're accomplishing this goal that you set out to do. Like, way back when you were younger, when you started in sports or whatever. Um, and then you get like you said, you couldn't even reach back into your back seat, let
Mhm.
alone think about like styling someone's hair, and here you are now. So it's crazy how life works like that, isn't it? You know, we don't really know how we're gonna get there. You just kinda have to, I guess, trust or have a little faith that it's gonna be okay, or that, you know, if you just kind of keep going, you keep chugging along, you keep, like, trying to listen to the friends, to the voices, to the intuitions, whatever, you'll kind of find yourself in a seat at some point.
Absolutely.
Do
I
you
think too, it's a lot of like not beating yourself up. Like, there's times where, like I said, like you have a full ride scholarship, you're supposed to go to school. That's what you're supposed to do. So I spent a lot of time like, did I fuck up? Like, did I ruin everything because I didn't push through, because I let my injury just kind of control, because I let, my worry of my home life, control things. And it's that exact thing that I'm like, I would not be where I am today had I not made those decisions, had I not chosen to do things the way that I did. So it's, finding, taking your mistakes or taking your decisions and reflecting and finding out, well, what was that for? What was the purpose of that? And then, using those to, if there's certain things that really are eating you alive and decisions that you don't like, that you can't live with, like, okay, well, how do I make sure that doesn't happen again? So
Mm.
I think that's the important part. But ultimately, again, the struggle and the uncomfortability is all worth something. It all gets you somewhere. So it's not to put down feeling doubt or uncertainty and things like that, but to find, okay, well, how do I make myself feel more certain, to feel less doubtful?
Yeah, you know, and I think just by you sharing your story of like, you know, I kind of like I ended up in a place that feels pretty right. I think that's, you know, that in itself is helpful to people because, you know, a lot of people are going through it right now, and a lot of people are, you know, maybe they're in that few year period of like, man, what do I want to freaking do? Like, what's going on? What should I do with my life, or what would fulfill me? And I think just knowing that you don't always get the answers super quick. You don't always even get the answer. So I guess like you just kind of keep stumbling through, and eventually you can get in a place where you sit back and realize, okay, I mean, this is, of course I'm here because of course everything has led me to this spot, and this is right where I'm supposed to be. So, hey,
Exactly.
I
That's
did
it.
have I did have a question on Adderall. So, because this is always a touchy subject because I always, you know, try to give my recommendations or my advice of what I've experienced, but I'm also like, I'm not a fucking doctor. Like, be careful, you know, whatever. But I've talked about me before. There was a while where I was on 20 milligrams. I would take 2 10s a day, and then I
Mhm.
lowered it back down, and that was just too much. And I lowered it down to I was down to, I think I went to 15 for a while, and then to 10, and it was mainly 10. And then I decided I wanted to get off of it. I wanted to like try to, you know, work on things like meditation and in other ways of controlling my attention span, my focus, um, my even kind of sometimes like combating a weird, your attention span doesn't keep up, and so you get suddenly immensely tired like brick
Yeah.
walls. And Adderall helped with that, which is, you know, the amphetamines in it. But so so I trickled down, and then I've been off it for years now. But I'm always kind of like trying to flirt with how can I recommend, you know, if anybody else wants to get off of it without saying like, hey, quit your medication, or
Yeah.
whatever. So do you have any things like when you were lessening your dosage and stuff, did you have anything that seemed to help?
It's so tough. I mean, when I first was doing it, it was just or the understanding of like, okay, like I'm not crazy. This is making me feel this way. So I remember just cutting everything in half. Like I was like, okay, I'll take one in the morning and take one in the afternoon. And I found that I'm like, I still feel the effects of it, cutting it in half. Um, and I feel like for a while, like it's really hard when you're coming off because you feel like tired, you feel unmotivated, you feel like unproductive compared to when you are on it. Um, I think it's like the same thing with trying to quit any drug. Like, just know that it's so rewarding to cut yourself off and that you're capable of living life without it. And like now, like there are times where I'm like, ooh, I want to clean the house. Like I'm gonna get an Adderall from my friend. I'm gonna take a half, and I'm gonna you know, do everything. But I think about like when I was on it, like that half an Adderall was just for me to, or that Adderall then was just for me to get through my day. So it's interesting to see how much that it really does affect you and how much it really doesn't affect you. It's like with anything, you build up an immunity to it. And like, it's like with any drugs, that one dose will, the first time you take it, you're like, whoa, I feel like I can fly. And then that one dose becomes, okay, I need a little bit more actually. And then you need a little bit more. So it's going to be this constant like revolving door of need a little bit more, need a little bit more. So I just really think it is like, it's tough and it's hard for like the first, couple months, honestly, adjusting to not having it, because it's hard to like get out of bed and get moving. And then you second guess like, oh, if I would have taken it, I would have done so much more. But like, honestly, would you have? Probably not. Like there's so much when I compare to like what I actually got done with it versus what I could accomplish without it. It's kind of the same.
Yeah. Like maybe you didn't feel as up and intense.
Yeah. Maybe I wasn't like up, but
yeah. We're always trying to get to the most optimal comfort, or, this that same place in us that wants that high in a sense too. But I think, we have our society, it seems like so many people, because the internet is so available to us, because, like anybody who's going through some sort of symptoms can follow, a few weeks of YouTube rabbit holes. And then they're like, whoa, okay, I didn't realize it before, but I have ADHD, or whoa, I didn't realize it, but I'm OCD or whatever. And there's some extent which is very good, because people are like, oh wow, Jesus, now I can find ways of helping me. I can find communities that are of people like me and listen to how they have helped their similar issues. But I think a lot of us, we really latch our identity onto, like, I am someone with ADHD. If I didn't have this, you wouldn't want to be around me. If I didn't have this, I would get nothing done. If I didn't have this, I would never get out of bed. And maybe this is really genuinely the case for some people. And if that is so, I provide you with sympathy for sure. But I think that being able to talk about, you know, being able to get off of these things, like you don't necessarily have to live on high doses of things that, if you've learned like, oh, it's just not really working for the stage of my life anymore. Like you had changed stages in your life, and it just wasn't really working to try to take the the nos before work every day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think too, it's like, it's the same way though. I mean, like coffee, like I'm like, I have coffee every single day, and it's something that I'm like, if I don't have it, to me, it's not like, oh, I didn't get anything done. I will be like, oh, I have a headache because I didn't have coffee. And like, I make up these things in my head, but really it's like, I probably am just dehydrated. Like, so there's always something, and don't get me wrong, I'm the first person to like, I have a caffeine headache. And then I look, I'm like, no, I'm dehydrated. But in that moment, you're like, no, I have a headache because I didn't have caffeine. So we're always constantly, making things that we're always looking for validation or for answers, if you will, as to why we do or why we feel or why. But then when you reflect, I think that's the important part, is to then reflect on what you say in that moment. Is that actually the reality of what I was experiencing and what was going on?
Well, and I think practice is something that's, for all of these things. Like, have you practiced the attention? Because attention is a skill,
Yeah.
And for me, like after I had like weaned off Adderall, and even while I was still on it, I was starting to try to sharpen my focus, try to sharpen my attention. I'm trying to watch this, video, this audio engineering video or whatever, and I have the urge to like, oh, I want to go grab my phone, or like, oh, I want to like, let's scroll through social media. But that's a moment where you've got to be like, oh, this is where I'm training my attention. So I'm going to say no to that feeling. And I'm going to say, nope, Jake, you're going to focus your attention on this video right now. Oh, you're floating away again. Cool. I'm going to find a way to keep focusing. I'm now going to get a piece of paper and write notes about this thing so I can focus and train my attention. So, a lot of our, um, psychological, just they're not bad things. They're not burdens. They're not. It's just how we are. Just some people are certain ways. And cool. This, you're handed in life, when you come into life, you're handed with like, here's what you're dealing with, and you find a way to deal with it. And that's your burden to shoulder. That's your thing to carry. And I think that a lot of times we learn about them, or like, oh, I have ADHD, and then we're like, well, now I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to go to the doctor and he's going to tell me what to do. And realistically, there's a whole other side of this of, get your medication, if it helps you, that's great. But also be wondering, okay, how can I insert ways to focus, how can I try to improve my memory, and there's literally apps for improving your memory now, and all this stuff. So there is ways to kind of,
Challenge yourself.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
totally.
you grow. You're cooler on the other side of it because you've grown now too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, my friend, we are getting up here in time. I know the El Nye is on her way to the East Coast, so
Yes.
I will let you go here shortly. I just want to say I really appreciate you coming on, Crystal. I really appreciate you doing this. I know that you communicated you were nervous about it, which I totally get that. So thank you for having courage in the face of that
Thank
nervousness.
you to do so. It made me comfortable. So
Yeah,
really,
good. I'm glad you were comfortable. I think you got it. You got some good advice for people, and it was nice to have you on here. And let's end with. I've been trying to mix up my last questions. I always like those. What? Here's what. Okay, what has this last year, in meaning, let's say, since COVID and the changes that it threw all over the world, what has it
mhm.
taught you about yourself?
um, I feel like one of the biggest things, and it's like me now transitioning to like I'm comfortable with work and I'm happy I'm doing it. No one's going to do anything for you. Like if you want something, if you want to get it, no one's going to do it for you. So, and it's hard because sometimes you feel like, well, I don't have the resources, or like I don't have the knowledge of that, or like I'll never be able to read enough to know the business side of things, or whatever it is. Like you have everything within you to get what you want. So don't limit yourself because of what you think that you aren't capable of. Um, I think it's allowed me to, like I said, like if you want something, go get it. And I'm currently in that phase of realizing, like, okay, don't think that you're not able to do something because it never seemed feasible before. You're the only one standing in your way.
Mm. Massive, massive. I love that. That was like such a perfect answer. Okay, Crystal, thank you so much. Listeners, take care of yourselves. Check out Crystal's Instagram if you want to see her hair, and remember that when you're looking at those pictures, there's so much more than just the picture. And message her if you're in Philly and you need your weave done. Hit her up. Um, oh,
Love you, Jake. Thank you so
perfect
much.
timing. Yes, love you, sis. Thank you. Have a good rest of your day. Give my best to Will and Lana.
I will. I'll
We'll see
talk
you
to you
later.
soon.
Bye bye.
Conversations with ourselves.